Hey everyone, I'm your host, Amin Dillon, and today on the show, I'm joined by Nadine Bernard, an entrepreneur and co-chair female of the Indigenous Peoples Commission for the Liberal Party of Canada. Nadine has dedicated her career to advancing Indigenous participation in politics, business, and community leadership. We're going to talk to her about her journey as a woman in politics, her experiences as an Indigenous leader, and how we can all help bring more diverse women into public life. Nadine, thank you so much for being on the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share, a little bit of my journey into politics, and yeah, I hope it inspires others to want to do it as well.
Okay, so let's get to know you a little bit better. So, talk to us a little bit about where you're from and what your upbringing was like.
So I'm from the Wagamama First Nation, which is a First Nation community located in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. Small community. When I grew up, it was about a 5 to 600 population. I think we've probably tripled the population since then. Right on the water, beautiful, lots of family, and just different opportunities that have come through not only our community but the island and the region, and it just gave me lots of opportunities of exposure.
So, what were the first exposures to sort of politics?
That was a lot later in life. I mean, your normal secondary school opportunities, running on student council. I did that in grade 10, 11, and 12, and then kind of put that aside for a while. And I was hearing different candidates and parties coming through our community and seeing different signage, but I never felt like I could be a part of it. I didn't feel that inclusive kind of opportunity at that time until later on in life. My eldest daughter had become, very interested and intrigued by it. Had attended an event in Ottawa, and upon her return, was like, "Okay, we're doing this. We're getting involved." Working on elections, knocking on doors, driving her to different places because she didn't have a license at the time, and it showed me a whole different world. And I saw, and I guess that's when I was more observant that there was little to no Indigenous representation within municipal, provincial, and federal here in our part of Canada. And so that really kind of said, well, hey, wait a second, I think I want to be a part of the change.
You had no one, like no role model, no one as a mentor that when you were saying we need change, like were you looking to recruit someone or were you like, I'm going to be that change, I'm going to run?
Well, at the time, I wanted to be the person to help support and advocate. While we were working on various people's campaigns and women delegates, it I was hoping someone would kind of put their name forward and I would do the work, to support them. And then when you weren't seeing it, it was like, okay, well, somebody has to do it. I'll throw my name in. Very early on into the party, no name recognition whatsoever, and just kind of just made some bold entrances into it, and just kind of pushed my way in to say I'm here. I want to be a part of it, and it paid off, in a few years. But I got the opportunity when they came knocking on my door and asking. So it was worth the effort.
So, you were asked to run.
The second time, yeah.
Second time. Okay, let's talk about the first time because that's always, I think, the biggest step is the first time you put yourself up, right? Because you have no idea what you're about to embark on. So, take us back for the nomination. You went for a nomination. So, talk to us a little bit about that decision, putting yourself up for the nomination, and what your experience was like.
In the beginning, it was a little lonely. What I've definitely learned through being involved in politics is there's a community, and the community kind of encompasses within itself, and they know one another and they've kind of grown with each other and supported, and there isn't always a good or an easy uptake when there's someone new that wants to come in. I mean, that was just my experience and my observations. And so I assumed that having put your name forth to knock on doors, make calls, and waving signs and being where you need to be to support candidates, I figured that would be enough, to be embraced. And then when I discovered that that wasn't the case, and that's when I made some bold moves. And in 2015, I wanted to be a part of the provincial election here in Cape Breton in the Sydney riding. And there was an incumbent who had been a long-time municipal councillor, went on to pretty much walked into the provincial position. And even the riding association said, it's going to be a disaster for you. The numbers are in his favor, not yours. And I said, that's not the point. I'm coming in to practice my democratic right to be a part of democracy, to be an Indigenous woman, to put her name on the ballot, to knock on doors and encourage people to, put their name my way. And, I remember walking into the nomination hall and, there were tons of people walking in, easy, a little over 200 people, crowded room. I spent like weeks perfecting my speech and saying, exactly the message I wanted to say. And if that's all I walked away with was the message and the impact, then I at least accomplished my mission. I had shown that I wanted to be a real player. I was a part of the party, and win or lose, to me, it was a win-win. And I lost the nomination, stood beside the candidate, supported the candidate in his winning of being the candidate, but also for that particular seat, and just stayed involved. Took some time away a little bit to kind of reflect, and then I wanted to come back. And this time it was them coming to knock on my door. I think loyalty and commitment goes a long way. And showing that you want to be a part of it, you believe in the mission, you believe in the party, and still standing by, wanting to see an Indigenous candidate. At the time, we had never elected an Indigenous person in the provincial legislature in history. And so, it was, why aren't we? As old as our province was, and not having elected one, I wanted to be a part of that process. So in 2021, I sought the nomination, did really, really well, changed strategy, built a good team, an amazing team, and did a ton of work. And I got my name on the ballot and ran against, again, a 17-year incumbent, holding that seat. But I gave him, a good run. Knocked on 1,000 doors, and I think I was like 37% of the vote. So for a first time, being on the ballot, second largest geographical riding in Nova Scotia, I think I did pretty good.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's then go back to that second nomination, though. From the first one to the second one, what do you feel like you did differently? You were mentioning a couple of things, like you got a better team and whatnot, but what do you think it was that really helped you actually win the nomination?
There's rules of engagement, rules of the game. I think you need to understand and learn. Understand the issues, understand the people, the community, your the constituents. But how do you speak to them and to it? Can you hold conversations on various topics? Can you put yourself out there completely, for community, and hear the difficult things that need to be said, and then finding people who will help you knock on those doors and echo your messaging, and echo at the doors what needs to be said. And my team was amazing. I'm truly grateful for them. I had a minor health issue, and my team were right there to walk beside me, and it was good. And the party did everything to be very, very supportive in my seeking of the seat.
Do you think if the party had not approached you for the second time around, would you on your own, would you have gone for another nomination?
I was asked by peers at the time, and actually a colleague in the office I was working at the time, we were having a conversation, and it was, would you run? Would you run? Do you think it was worth it? Do you think we should? We've got a good thing here, and no, it's a lot of work. It's time, and do I really want to, put myself out there again? And but when you're in it, it's the most exciting, exhilarating um, experience and run and people and conversations. Like to this day, I drive by my, part of my riding often, actually numerous parts of the riding, and I can look at the houses and I can still recall my 2021 conversations of people. That house was this house was this woman here, that one here, their kids here, and that really stayed with me. So I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I was a confident and ready candidate this time. Um, I I feel like if I do another run, it'll probably be federal.
I was actually going to ask you, are you going to run again? So that's a yes, federally.
Yeah, I don't think I'd run provincially. I think it's funny. The more, wisdom is a funny thing as you get older, and as you're more obvious and you're more aware of things, and where you want to put your attention and where do you want to put your energy. And I was actually asked a couple times, would you run? Just actually a couple days ago, from another MP, would you run federally? And I said, you know what, my next time I put my hat in the ring, it's going to be federally.
Do you have any sort of expectations of how federally would be similar or different to provincial?
I think the same amount of work. I think you need the same kind of team structure and approach. And I would be very um, intent in how I build numbers in each of the areas, like in mail in ballots, knocking on doors, early voter, hitting targets and meeting them. I would definitely, be very strategic the next time. But the key people who have offered, if I do put my name in for a federal nomination, I feel really confident in what that would look like the next time.
That's exciting. We look forward to seeing you wherever you decide to run. After the two experiences running, you then decided to continue on by joining the Indigenous Peoples Commission. First of all, what is that commission and what made you become drawn to it?
In my early days, prior to ever becoming a candidate, I was approached by a then sitting co-chair of what was then called the Aboriginal Peoples Commission, and reached out to say we are looking for provincial representation at the table. Are you interested? Our whole mandate is to encourage Indigenous participation, to put their name forth at a federal level in politics, and you're a part of the recruitment, the encouraging, the supporting of national Indigenous candidates, not only in your province or region, but right across the country, provincially and territorial. And that was exciting. And so, getting invited to this table of provincial and territorial Indigenous table officers and co-chairs, both male and female. And I really was intrigued that there was an equal voice of representation of the two at that senior level. And that really helped me be more aware of seasoned Indigenous people who are involved in politics, to hear more of, like, what's been done, what's their hopes, what have we learned, and where are we going. And so stayed with that for a bit, and then, like I said, I had stepped away from politics altogether for about 2 years. And then upon coming back following my second participation in 2021, I was asked if I wanted to be a co-chair. And by then I felt like I could contribute, and I really, really do firmly believe and want to be a part of more Indigenous women putting their name forward on the federal level and provincial level as well.
When you're helping other women run, Indigenous women, or getting them to at least consider the thought of running, and you're sharing your journey. What kind of feedback are you getting? Do you find that there are common barriers or challenges that you yourself faced and you find that women are still facing?
When I talk to some candidates, whether they be female or Indigenous candidates in general, sometimes it's a financial barrier and not having the financial infusions into their campaigns, because campaigns are expensive, and especially if you have to step away from your job and needing that financial stability, especially if you're a single woman, a widowed woman, and those financial barriers can be a deterrent to want to be a part of it. um, and depending on your riding, right? I happen to have a pretty rural. I mean, it's the second largest geographic riding in the province, but it was like half of Cape Breton, so very rural. Couldn't walk it; you had to drive.
That definitely makes it challenging. So it's been now some time since you've run. Do you feel like it's become better or easier for women who are interested in joining politics?
What I was very pleased to see in this last election were some very interesting candidates put their name forth, and that there was a interest in seeing some Indigenous representation. I feel pleased. I am happy that even at a ministerial level, once the party had won, that there's Indigenous representation where we should see Indigenous representation. It's been a long time coming, especially when it comes to the decisions and the conversations regarding Indigenous people and issues that are unique to us. It's nice to hear it from the voice of someone who understands what that means, with lived experience.
Let's talk again a little bit more about the commission, because I think, it's so interesting that, each party has their own commissions, in particular the Liberal Party, for them to have the Youth Commission, the Seniors Commission, the Women's Commission, Indigenous Peoples Commission. It's spotlighting these different groups where we do need representation. Is there any particular changes you're hoping to see implemented within the party that the commission is working on right now, so that in the next election we get even more Indigenous folk running, but in particular Indigenous women?
I don't think there necessarily needs to be made any changes, as much as that we need to see the support, like especially from a financial perspective. We have a fund where it supports Indigenous candidates, and we ask for the party and its donors to acknowledge and show support to the Indigenous fund. And because that right there, reduces a barrier for Indigenous participation in politics, and that's the goal of reconciliation, is reducing those barriers, creating inclusive strategies for them to participate. And so I want to be a part of that active recruitment, that active motivation, that if they need a phone call for that, why should I do this, and why shouldn't I? And I want to be that. And where they need us, they know we're there, and that there is a collective that wants to see exactly that, Indigenous women representation.
Then in terms of role models and mentorship, you've been kind of touching upon this, that it's important to have someone there that you kind of feel like can help guide you. So you want to be that for other women. I wanted to know, was there any particular role model you had or someone that you were able to connect with that really helped you with your journey in politics?
I got really lucky to have a collective of women in politics. That the Women's Commission locally here in Nova Scotia was great. There were some key people in putting that paper in front of me, and when I push it back, they're like, "No, do it again." Like, they didn't give up on me, and that they truly helped me find my confidence, and I'm grateful for them. They've also encouraged me to give back. Anywheres where you can just say, I've been there, I felt it, I was scared, I was motivated, I was tired, I felt defeated. even in a loss, even if you came with the biggest smile and the happiest face and say, I took the loss with grace. A loss is still, hurtful, and it's still, um, you know, can feed that doubt that you have, and wondering, do you have what it takes, and are you, ready for that? And maybe it was just not at that time. And so having those positive voices, I think, are really helpful when it doesn't go in your favor.
We hear about people losing at a nomination level, but, as we just saw in the last federal election, even provincial election, I'm going to talk about us here in Ontario, there were some folk that did not win again and they were already elected, right? So, you just, when it's in politics, you just never know like what's going to happen. You could lose in the nomination as a candidate, or after, having spent years as an elected official.
I remember a candidate when I was actually seeking municipal elections, and he said, "You don't want to be the one who's known for losing." And I said, "I see it in the opposite. I want to be the one who's been known for trying and never giving up." And so, if I'm going to be intimidated by loss, I'm actually inspired by the challenge. And
Exactly.
that to me is how I've been able to say yes to putting my name forth. And it's a huge commitment. It's a vulnerable position to be put. Like, they go through your everything to expose who you are, and to see if you're someone that they want to put forth.
So let's leave this episode with some great advice we can give to a woman that's watching this who is thinking of running. What do you feel is the best advice that you would like to pass on?
One, know that you're not alone. There is representation, like I said, provincially and territorial, right across the board, of someone provincially and federally that is willing to help, that's willing to connect, that's willing to do what they need to get you to the next level. So to know that you have that, and know that everybody has a fair chance. Post 1960, where we were allowed to vote and we were allowed to be a part of the democratic process, it's a privilege, and it's a privilege that I don't take lightly. And so I really want to encourage those to participate in that democratic opportunity.
And then if people want to be able to connect with you, it's the best way to get in touch.
So the Indigenous Peoples Commission has a website, and they have a contact email on there. And if you send something to the email through there, it gets communicated through your representation of where your messaging is coming from.
Fantastic. So for everyone that's interested in learning more, or, getting some further feedback, do reach out to Nadine. And Nadine, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
You're welcome.